always hear the Confederates talk about their history and their heritage. It's my history and it's my heritage, when really they're just a bunch of Germans who actually fought for the Union. Their ancestry didn't even get here until after the Civil War, so they don't know their history and their heritage. In fact, it would be important to know your history and your heritage. When you go look through all the decades in the past, you're going to sit there and say that the 1850s and the 1860s were the greatest. That's the generation you associate with most. The 1860s. Bullshit. These dumbass fucking Confederate dumb fucks. They don't know shit about the 1870s. They don't know shit about the 1840s. They probably don't even know shit about the 1970s. The 60s was the best generation, bar none, hands down. The 60s was the greatest generation. The 90s was okay, but 1820s? That's not me. I don't resonate with the 1820s. They're advocating for the strong mayor. Big Daddy Strange is going to save us all. All we need is some Superman coming out of, out of the damn woodwork, and there's going to be a Camelot. We're going to find this perfect person, pull him out of the woodwork, and then we're going to have Camelot here in Pueblo City. I bet it's not a poor person. I bet it's not a person that represents working class interests. I bet the money interest will get their candidate in there. So Big Daddy Strange, we're going to get a boss banker. That's what's going to happen. A boss banker is going to become Big Daddy Strange. And then a boss banker is going to rule over Pueblo. It's going to be tyranny here. So we've not had tyranny. We've had strong executives. So, since the 1950s, since 1950, since John Oliver Hall changed the form of government to a manager council system, so we have a city manager instead of a mayor system. I know that's complicated. I know that's so complicated, but instead of actually you have a two-step process, okay? Just 2 steps. That's it. Just 2 steps. So first we elect our city council folks, and then they choose the mayor. Then they choose the professional chief executive. It's just like how corporations are set up. So, I don't think that government should be ran like a business. I do think it should be efficient like a business, and we should cut out redundancies. So we're not trying to, just tax everybody and waste a bunch of money. But we haven't had tyranny. And so the people that are advocating to have a mayoral system, I heard Gardasar say, well, we've had the same problems for the last 8 years. We've still got the same problems. Well, have we had the same problems since the 1950s? Essentially, what the people who want this strong mayor, is shitting on every generation since the 1950s. They're saying that Pueblo City has sucked since 1950. The 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s generation, every single one of these decades is. 1950 was John Oliver Hall. 1950 was John Oliver Hall. 1951 was John Oliver Hall. John Oliver Hall steps down in 1952. So he gets this city manager. He's a city manager, like one of the young ones. He was city manager of 2 or 3 different cities. He comes here, and he was very popular here. He did kind of strong-arm them to give him another $1,000 or so. He was going to leave and go somewhere else, but we were able to retain him for another year. But then something happened in 1952. W.T. Lohman steps up, and it says appointed. It's got a little A next there. So W.T. Lohman was appointed to take over John Oliver Hall. That's 1952. 1953, we had Russell W. Rink, and then 54, 55, and 56. Russell W. Rink was the city manager. He was the chief executive. Did we have tyranny here? Was it horrible then? We are shitting on our history and heritage by supporting to throw away the city manager system and get the strange mayor. We are shitting on every fucking Russell W. Rink would have been the city manager who oversaw the 1954 city charter. So we need to give credit where credit is due. Russell W. Rink is the man that brought forth the 1954 city charter. But, you're going to have Gardasar's group is shitting on Russell W. Rink's face. He's like, fuck you, Russell W. Rink. So, the Glenn Turner, let's just go through this. I had a superintendent where I just listed all of them, and I found that to be a useful video. So that's what we'll do here. 1957, Glenn S. Turner was the city manager for 2 years. So, we had Russell W. Rink. We've had John O. Hall and W.T. Lohman so far. Now it's 58, Glenn S. Turner. Now 59, we got Glenn Turner / George Fellows. That brings us into the 60s. In the 60s, from 1960 to 1966, we had George H. Fellows. George H. Fellows was the city manager for 6 or 7 years. The district council candidates, let's just pick one year here. 50 was Phil K. Hudspeth, Richard D. Robb, Georgia F. Faribault, James M. Watson, Cyrus J. Burris Jr., Fred Voss, and Richard T. Lyles. So that's the 60s. I wonder if Fred Voss is related to Taylor. Okay, so now 67, Neil G. Berlin. He was city manager for 1 year in 67, which is, that was an explosive year in American politics. Then we get ourselves kind of a little dictator, Fred E. Weisbrod. So Fred E. Weisbrod became city manager in 1970 up until 1984. So for 14 fucking years, Fred E. Weisbrod was the tyrant of Pueblo City. We need more tyranny? Is that what you're saying? We need more. 1 year, 1975. So Fred E. Weisbrod is the city manager of Pueblo City, and then F.W. Bill Haver is District 1 city councilman. Bert A. Hereford is another one. Jerry R. Daughtery, Tom C. Gilmore, Henry G. Rise, Patricia D. Kelly, and then Melvin Takaki, DDS, whatever that's supposed to mean. So Fred E. Weisbrod, for 14 fucking years, was the city manager. But his legacy is gone. Did he do anything? Evidently not. 70s must have fucking sucked in half of the 80s. John M. Bramble. In 1985, we had a city manager named John M. Bramble. John M. Bramble. And then he got booted out for Lewis Quigley in 1986. Lewis Quigley is going to be the city manager from 86 until 2000. So this is the second 14-year termer. Lewis Quigley and Fred Weisbrod. I'll be honest, it's kind of amazing that anybody could have a 14-year term as a city manager. 14 fucking years. This is the boss. This is the king. This is the guy. This is the chief executive. And they could have been fired at any moment, at any time. Just a simple majority vote of city council, 4 of 7, and a 30-day notice. And then city manager is gone. They're gone forever. So Lewis Quigley goes up until the year 2000, and then it goes to Lee R. Evatt. Lee R. Evatt is the city manager for 3 years, to 2002, 2003. I want to mention the board in 2000. You had Robert D. Schilling Jr., Al Garul, Rich Golinda, Ted Lopez. Then you had Bill Sova, Corrine Kohler, and then Patrick K. Abelos. That's the city council in 2000. So that's Lewis Quigley's last year as city manager. And then Lee R. Evatt came onto the scene. He was our new Superman. 2001, Lee R. Evatt, he was going to be our new Superman from Camelot. He was going to come, not from Pueblo City, but I don't know who Lee R. Evatt is. But a lot of times these managers are from, outside the city. So we're looking for a Superman who's going to be the Camelot, who's going to be the face of Pueblo City from outside the city. That's unacceptable. You must fucking live here. You're going to rule over us but not live here? Fuck, you must think of all of us as dumbass, peasant, fucking slave, serf, nobodies. So Lee R. Evatt is the city manager for 3 years here in Pueblo City, and then David J. Galley. And just like Aguilera had said, David J. Galley gets kicked out in 2009. So in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, David J. Galley was the city manager for Pueblo City. And then in 2009, Jerry Pacheco. Okay, so Jerry Pacheco becomes the city manager for the city of Pueblo in 2009, 2010, and 2011. 2012, there's mentioned a whole bunch here. You got Jenny Edelman and James Munch, who was listed as city managers. So Jerry Pacheco, he got into some car accident and he was drunk. He walked away from a scene, and that was a big controversial thing here. David Galley brought Obama here. That got David Galley fucking booted out, I think. That's what Aguilera had said in that one article. And then this Jerry Pacheco, I know that he got into, an accident and he had some turmoil going on there. So I'm not for sure if that's what city council ended up firing him for. But that's how, for 14 years, no more of these 14-year fucking dictatorships. We have a 3-year term, then we have a 6-year term, then we have a 3-year term, and now Sam Azad, I think he gets in there 2013. He's been there for 4 or 5 years. So Sam Azad's on a 4, maybe 5-year. So the city managers, you had Jerry Pacheco. I guess we can consider Jenny Alderman and James Munch. They were the interims, so Jerry Pacheco for 3 years, David Galley for 6 years, Lee R. Evatt for 3 years. Lewis Quigley for 14 years. From 86 to 2000, Lewis Quigley was the king of Pueblo City. John M. Bramble, 85 and 86. Fred E. Weisbrod from 1984 to 1968. In 67, we had Neil G. Berlin. George H. Fellows to 59 from 1966 to 59, so that's 7 years. George H. Fellows had a 7-year term. Then Glenn S. Turner had a 2.5-year term in 57, 58, and half of 59. Russell W. Rink had 4 years, and then John Oliver Hall had 2.5 years. Since the 1950s, that's the list of